Good morning, Ultimate Hustlers and Digital Empire Builders. It is that time for another episode of the Cortez Hustle Show. And today we're talking profitable nonprofit with Judy Forbin. She's going to be laying out how she's helped secure millions of dollars in funding for the nonprofit organizations that she works with in the past as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month. I can't wait to have this conversation. A lot of you guys have some great ideas to impact the world. The question is, how do you get the funding and the financing to make it all happen? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So do me a huge favor, comment in the chat where you're from, drop the name of your business and on your brand, and smash that sub button, ladies and gentlemen. And let's kick it this morning. Yo, what's up, Ultimate Hustlers, and welcome to the Cortez Hustle Show, the business podcast for the entrepreneur of the 21st century. And I'm your host, Cortez Hustle. Our goal is to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how the world's greatest hustlers build amazing brands, scale their businesses to incredible heights, sell more, make more, and create mass movements that impact the world. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned vet or you're sitting on the sidelines with aspirations to one day unleash your inner hustle. This show will provide the insights into how pure grit, determination, and hard work has morphed into some of the most iconic brands and personalities and how they are moving the culture forward. You'll get a mix of solo shows featuring yours truly, as well as interviews and content from other hustlers that I either know personally or I've learned from or whose grind I've come to know and respect. And you'll also get exclusive recordings from our membership called Monetize My Life Academy, which you can check out at monetizemylifeacademy.com. That's a program where we go live every month with some of the best hustlers on the planet, sharing best practices on how we all can explode our brands with advanced branding and marketing tactics, business development strategies, and financial game planning necessary to build the empires we all desire. Again, that's at monetizemylifeacademy.com. If you like today's episode, chances are the hustlers you're connected to will like it as well. Share it with those in your network. And when you do, use hashtag Cortez Hustle so I can see you and hopefully give you a shout out and share you in my stories. So check out today's episode and make sure you subscribe to the feed on your favorite podcasting networks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cortez Hustle Show. I am, of course, your host, Cortez Hustle, everybody's favorite fatherpreneur, coming to you from the Acceleration Business System Studios right here in St. Louis, Missouri. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with the Acceleration Business System, that is the program that we provide for small businesses, local, including coaches and consultants, to help them accelerate their business by working less and earning more. At the core of every business is your system. Is your system getting you the results that you want it to? That is the question you must ask yourself. And if not, then you can text local biz to 314-730-3999. Again, if you text local biz to 314-730-3999, you can get on the calendar to have a consultation and see if the Acceleration Business System is right for you. Today, we're talking about profitable nonprofit organizations and just nonprofit organizations in general, man. What are they? How do they work? How do they function? And everybody seems to be starting nonprofits these days, but what does that actually mean? And we got a very special guest, Ms. Judy Forbin, is going to break it all down for us today. But before we get into that, a couple quick announcements. Got to say a huge, huge, huge thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you who have supported the Black Biz Success Show on Roku channel, on the Unheard TV channel. Man, I am getting some great feedback. We are on episode number 2, dropped this week on Wednesday, and you guys are loving it. And I just got to say thank you, man. I thank you for the support. You guys know what I am here for and what I'm all about. I'm trying to help Black people become the number one employers of Black people in the next 2 generations. And I don't do that without support of people like you. So thank you so much for that. Also, speaking of Black people becoming the number one employers of Black people, I got a free workshop going down tomorrow for pop-up vendors and pop-up vendor hosts. That's right. If you love to share your wares at different pop-up locations, I want to help you understand how to put systems in place to guarantee your success at a pop-up vendor, right? What do we know about pop-up vendors? Sometimes you go do a pop-up shop or you go vend at a specific event and there's no traffic, right? Well, how did you fix that? You fix that with putting the right systems in place. And I want to help you do that. So I'm going to put a link in the comments. If you go to thorntononlinemarketing.com/events, then you can register for that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Can't wait to share some of my thoughts with how to maximize your efforts on pop-up events. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to some of you guys and present to others a young lady that I have been referred to because she all she does is help nonprofit organizations get to the bag, man. So I want to make sure that I introduce her to y'all, because if you ever thought about starting a nonprofit, or you have a nonprofit, you sit on the board of a nonprofit, and what is the problem with all nonprofits? They need funding. They don't know how to get it. Well, this young lady helps people do just that. So without further ado, let me introduce to some of you guys and present to others, Miss Judy Forbin. Good morning, Judy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me this morning.
Awesome. Well, we got a lot to cover in this world and in this space of nonprofits. But before we do any of that, we start every episode of the Cortez Hustle Show with a quote of the day. And the way that it works is I'm going to share a quote, usually something that kicks me in the teeth as I'm doing my morning routine. So I just kind of jot it down. I like to share it with the audience. So you can either comment on mine, or if you have a favorite quote that you like to share or that you like to live by, then certainly by all means share that with us. But today's quote says this: to become great, you got to be consistently good over a long period of time, right? And that's from the great E.T., Dr. Eric Thomas, right? I heard people calling him E.T. and I forget he's a doctor, so I want to give him his respect. I'm gonna put some respect on his name, Judy. He's Dr. E.T., right? To become great, you got to be consistently good over a long period of time. And I think sometimes that goes over a lot of people's head. We're working and we do something well one time and we claim we are the stuff. We are the bee's knees. No, that ain't how you get great, man. You got to be good over a long period of time. And that's what solidifies your greatness. So do you have a favorite quote that you like to share, or do you want to comment on that one?
I think I'll comment on that one. That's a great one.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great all around, for entrepreneurs, for students, just for people in general, right? Like, we expect greatness out the gate. Like, the minute we do something good or we've had a good result, like, yes, I'm an expert now, or we start a business and we want to scale within a year or 2 years, but you don't even have, like everything that you need set up. It's really, greatness is consistently doing small things daily, and it's like, a snowball effect, right? Like, it all comes together for you eventually into what's truly greatness, because you learn it over time. You never start out with all the skills, with all the experiences that you need in order to achieve greatness. No one's born that way. It takes time. Where we as people, I think, struggle is with being consistent, right? Because when you don't see those immediate results, you want to quit, or you think what you're doing is not working. But it's like, think of the plant growing under the ground, right? You plant the seed and you don't know what's going on for 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 8 weeks. And before you know it, a little green shoot appears. Like, always think of yourself as being right below the soil, churning out. And pretty soon that green shoot that you are is going to pop up above ground. So stick with it.
Love it. That is the quote of the day right here on the Cortez Hustle Show, brought to you by personalbranding365.com. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are struggling to build your personal brand, you can't figure this social media thing out, then go to personalbranding365.com. I literally lay out the entire system that I've used over the last 8 years or so to really get myself out there. And here's what's funny. A lot of people don't realize this about me, but I'm an introvert. Right? But I was able to overcome that with some of the strategies that I disclosed in the Personal Branding 365 ebook. So go to personalbranding365.com. If you're struggling with building your brand, creating an online presence, using social media to grow your business, or just get a message out to the world, then this will certainly help you do just that. Personalbranding365.com. Now, Judy, my friend, I ask everybody who comes on the Cortez Hustle Show this one question, and I'm going to ask it to you, my friend. And the question is this: who the heck are you?
Loaded question, right? So,
Yes.
like everyone else, we have a couple of parts that make us up. So I am a Brooklyn girl. I am a mom. I am an educator, and am an entrepreneur. And I've been being an entrepreneur for about 3 years consistently. This has been
Mhm.
my full time experience. And so I come from a family, I would say, of entrepreneurs. I was, talking to my brothers recently, and I'm like, I think we only ever saw dad work one job in his entire life, and that was, like right before he retired.
Mm.
And so without knowing it, we sort of had that entrepreneurial spirit where you want to branch out on your own. You want to be able to do things and build a business on your own that takes care of your family and possibly something that you can pass on to the next generation. So, I was growing up, I was a nerdy kid, but also I liked sports and I liked performing and all of that. So I
Mhm.
was a pretty good student, med school bound.
Okay.
And somewhere along the way, I want to say what did it in was organic chemistry that I had to retake the year between graduation and applying for the MCAT. Um,
Yeah.
and that kind of sat me down. And I said, maybe there's some other things that you can do in life. In the meantime, like I had started teaching
Mhm.
with the purpose of I'm going to study for the MCATs, but whatever, I want to earn money. In the meantime, I started teaching biology. That was my background.
Gotcha.
And went started a master's program in health administration and policy, graduated from that, and flipped and switched careers from education, a biology teacher, into the field of healthcare as a manager, and was in healthcare for a pretty long time, working in the nonprofit sector and in hospitals, running adolescent programs, running clinical and community health programs throughout New York City, and was pretty
Mm.
fulfilled. And then I worked for a large New York City nonprofit. And when the trouble in 2008 happened, I was let go because we were majorly grant funded, and a couple of the grants that I was on were not going to be renewed. And suddenly, here I was out of work. And that's when I really first started to start this business. And initially, I said, well, I'm going to, put my writing skills to work, and I'm going to be a copywriter. I just knew that I
Mhm.
was a great writer. I had no clue about copywriting. I figured this is something that I can teach myself and make an entrepreneurial pursuit out of it. But life had other plans for me. I got recruited to work in the Caribbean, so in a global health sort of workspace. That was a great opportunity. Went ahead and did that for a few years, and that sort of solidified the skills that you need. So the technical background skills that you need
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur. And when I came back to the States, I said, I want to do this thing full time. I think I have enough background, I've had enough experience. I was doing grant writing, I was running organizations in the Caribbean, was running a hospital, a specialty hospital. And so there's 15 years here of nonprofit leadership, winning grants in the amount of like $20 million. And I said,
Mhm.
let me put some of those skills together and experience to help other nonprofit leaders launch and fund their organizations. Because we know that, the nonprofits that are profitable, those are the ones that have staying power.
Yeah.
There are a ton of nonprofits in the United States, but the majority of them are non-functional, meaning that they have a 501c3 tax exempt status, but they're not actually operational, or they may be a mom and pop shop, or just a pop shop
Mhm.
or a mom shop, one person.
Right.
In our
Gotcha.
communities, like I'm sure there's only probably about 1 or 2 degrees of separation between you and someone else who is a founder of a nonprofit. So
Mhm.
we know that nonprofits that are profitable and have staying power. There are a couple of things that they need. They need to have that strong organizational infrastructure, and they need to have strategic funding plans and programs that are based on a demonstrated need. Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, let me stop you right there, because you going
okay,
all the way in, and we
a
don't
lot,
want
right?
you to go in just yet.
Okay.
Uh, but talk about being a Brooklyn girl, man. And what was that upbringing like, right? You talked about being raised by dad who didn't have a job until y'all were much older, right? And you only seen him work one job. What was that like? From what I hear about New York, and for some reason, when I look at my analytics, New York messes with Cortez hustle, right? I got a lot of reach out of New York. I don't know why, but they talk about it being fast paced. They talk about it being a unique cultural experience with the 8 boroughs and different cultures within each borough, right? How did that affect you growing up, and what were you able to take from that upbringing as you started to work in these different places in the Caribbean and all that kind of stuff?
So my upbringing was pretty unique. I consider myself truly bicultural. So I call myself a Brooklyn girl because that's where I spent the majority of my life, but I was born in Trinidad. My parents are Caribbean. My parents lived here before that and then returned with me as a baby.
Okay.
And so, the running joke is we've always been hood adjacent. So you're in a private home or in a fancy building, but at the end of the block, there's the project.
Right.
And so, I went to school in the 90s to a solid, like, Brooklyn high school that was, pretty violent at the time. There was a lot going on, but I never felt a sense of like the pull of the streets, because in my home, like my parents' standards and understanding, sort of like without speaking it, you knew that success was expected of you. And so, you lived a true life, this American experience. You're going to school, you're making friends. But once you stepped into our doors, we were protected. In our neighborhood, we were protected. I lived on the border of Crown Heights in East New York. Today you wouldn't walk down the street really late at night all alone, but we grew up in a pretty dangerous neighborhood, but never feeling unsafe as kids. But also having that eagle eye, and you talk about it being really fast paced because New York is full of hustlers, right? Like people come there, they converge on this part of the world because that's what they've seen on TV. That's associated with success. It's associated with greatness, and we all want a piece of that. And that kind of runs through the veins of the borough. And so growing up, you hustled for everything that you wanted. I went to an inner city high school that probably didn't have all of the amenities of outlying high schools in the burbs in Long Island or in Staten Island or upstate Westchester, et cetera. So the opportunity there was, my dad would always say, it doesn't matter where you go to school. You have to be at the very best where you go to school and take the best that the school has to offer. And that sort of stuck with me. I was on every team, debate team, a leadership group, anything that allowed me to travel outside of the school building, anything that allowed me to have experiences outside of my neighborhood in Brooklyn. I jumped on it. And, so that paid off because, one, it gives you a great, fantastic resume in high school. Wanting to go to med school, I was involved in great summer programs where I was doing amazing stuff, like, interning on pediatric wards, actually assisting with autopsies. My mom didn't let me in her kitchen that summer. But this is like an amazing experience for an inner city student, being able to have access to some of the best hospitals in New York City and seeing what goes on behind it, seeing what it takes, moving around with doctors at the top of their field and medical students striving to get there. I think all of those experiences for me there was no limit. It was truly for me, like, you can really do it because look at the things that you've been exposed to as a teenager. The sky is the limit. I never felt held back by my community.
I love that, because and to hear you speak that way, it is like, perspective is everything, right? Because your parents could have easily said, man, listen, this is inner city. There is not much expectation from an inner city school or a kid coming from an inner city school. We ought to be lucky if our kid graduates. There's so much violence and all this stuff around. But at the same time, you're like, no, I want to make the most of this opportunity, period. And anything that, I love you said, anything that gets you out of the hood, anything that gets you out of the school for a day trip or whatever, sign me up. And that exposure to a lot of different things, I think it is really, really good for the cultivation of one's mind and one's imagination. So before we continue on, because I want to ask you about your experience and from a Black woman's perspective in corporate America. But before we do that, we do 1 minute motivation. If you're new to the Cortez Hustle Show, 1 minute motivation is where we play a short motivational video, usually 60 to 90 seconds or so. And I'm going to ask you to give a couple takeaways. Those who are watching us live will have the opportunity to comment a takeaway or two. I'm going to see if I can get this to work one way because as I tested it this morning, for some reason, my system was a little flaky this morning. But nevertheless, we're going to get into some 1 minute motivation right here on the Cortez Hustle Show.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's trying, at a point in his life, he's trying to make a transformation. He's trying to make a change. I just noticed how many times he talked about the things he liked and didn't like. He was talking about his needs and his aversions. Basing what you do on what you like and what you don't like is what got you the life you have. Our likes and dislikes are based on our parents and based on bad habits. So I was suggesting removing like and dislike from the decision-making process and asking yourself, is something right and is something true? For example, somebody talked to you in a way that you don't like. You may not like how the person talked to you, but it's of a greater benefit for you to ask yourself, is what they're saying right? Is it true? So right perception is what is going to get you right actions. Having an experience in this world that is enjoyable is going to be based on right perception, that you see things correctly, and then you choose right actions based on that right perception. Just because you like something doesn't make it right. Just because something hurts doesn't make it wrong. So I think people mistake likes and dislikes for intuition. I am suggesting that we pay less attention to what we like and what we don't like, and we ask ourselves what is right. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
I don't know about you, Judy. That gives me chills when I think about some of the harsh things that some of my coaches had to say to me and about me over the years. Just like, I don't like that you are speaking so loud and so aggressive towards me. But the question is, was it right? Were they telling you right? Even when we think about parenting, sometimes it's like, yeah, I don't like my mom right now. I don't like my dad right now, but is what they're telling me right? Is it going to help me in the long run? So the reason I love to do this is because we all just listen to the same clip, but based on where we are in life, we all heard something different. So what did you hear?
I heard, like an enlightened man, right? As the kids say, Will was spitting. Because if you're not in the right place, you're going to be driven by what you like and what you don't like. When you shift this perspective, and I find myself talking, a lot about shifting the perspective of how things affect us as you live and grow. The things that would offend me 10 years ago probably don't offend me now. Someone speaking harshly or someone criticizing, as a younger person, it was tough for me with criticism. I would like curl into a ball emotionally and really take it in. But as I got older, I learned to ask myself that question, or to look for, is there truth in what that person is saying? Is it right? Is it true? And then you learn, if it's not true for you, they said what they said, this is not true for me. If there is something there that you maybe need to look at or examine yourself and see, because it's an area of growth for you, then, part of growing up, part of being an enlightened individual is learning how to look inward and check yourself, and for the ways, for the cracks that you need to fill in or the things that you need to develop. So, I think he was on the right path with that. And I think the younger that we learn to detach ourselves, not from our feelings, but from like internalizing everything and making our decisions based on it, is the better off life experience, a better life experience that you'll have.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Mark says everything you want is in the uncomfortable zone. And I'm with you on that, Mark. I tell people all the time, man, there's a lot of safety and security inside the comfort zone, but nothing ever grows there, right? And we're all in pursuit of growth, and growth hurts, right? Growing pains are real. That's a real thing. There are pains in growth, and it's uncomfortable and it hurts, and you're never going to like it. Judy, I never, I've been working out consistently for 5 years. I never like to go work out. I never like the pain that I have to put my body through to get the growth and the gains and the fitness levels that I'm looking for. I never like it, right? And I stopped trying to like it. It's like, hey, it is what it is. I also drink green smoothies on a regular basis. And I don't always like them either. And people say, man, you really drinking that? My niece calls it a cup of grass one time. Uncle Cortez drinking a cup of grass. It was like, well, in essence, yes. And I just remember, like, in a past life, I would drink other things that I didn't necessarily like, but I was going after a particular effect. Well, the same is true when I drink my green smoothies. I don't have to like it. I want an effect that will keep me vibrant at age 65, 75, 85. So
Absolutely.
It's not about like, it's about what's right and being willing to go through the things that may not be comfortable or that you may not like, but are indeed right. As they say, you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect those dots looking backwards. And when I look back at all the people and situations in my life that were easy, it caused me hardship. And all the things that were hard, it caused me to have easier experiences as I got older. So that is 1 Minute Motivation, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the Cortez Hustle Show. We're listening to and learning from Judy Forbin. She is an amazing educator in the nonprofit space when it comes to grant writing, when it comes to securing funding, when it comes to organizational structures for your nonprofit so that you can run it profitably. That's what she does, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get all into that today, but I got a question for you. And I ask every Black woman that comes on the show to talk about your experience as a Black woman in corporate America. Because I know it's not easy for brothers, but we have a different experience. And I know sisters sometimes have added layers of discomfort sometimes and uneasiness in the workplace. Because as a man, other than maybe being encouraged to shave the hair off your face, there's not a whole lot that when it comes to our look that we get criticized on and that could potentially hold us back. But as a Black woman, there's a lot of decisions that you have to make going into corporate when it comes to assimilation. So what was your experience like in those areas?
In the beginning, I would say it was a pretty easy transition because I moved into education, and education is pretty relaxed in terms of the way that you present yourself, because you're working with young people, so you need to be able to be comfortable. And it's not a corporate structure per se where you may have to wear your hair a certain way. So I was good for the first few years, the first 5 years or so of my career. But when I shifted into healthcare on that middle management layer, you definitely have to look around the room and kind of, now it's really business casual. At the time, I had a relaxer, and then I remember cutting my hair and, doing the big chop and going natural. And it was just so fascinating to me to see the looks on people's faces when they see your real hair for the first time, or sometimes insensitive comments, or just knowing, that automatic look when you and there's another Black person in the space, that knowing eye that we give each other, where you kind of, you check the room and it's sort of like, all right, I see you, you see me. Really, it's we talk about like being in bicultural, but really it's a dichotomy when you're a Black woman in a corporate space, because you have to have those, you have to imbue those corporate values, but you also want to hold on to the sense of who you are. And for so long as Black women, you had to hide that. So your hair was relaxed, or you had to dress a certain way. You couldn't have certain colors in your hair, even though, your white compatriots, colleagues could do some of those things. You couldn't. I'm glad now that things are shifting ever so slightly. And of course, there's the just young women growing up being able to celebrate the naturalness of who they are without having to bend all the way to fit into a corporate structure that may not line up with who, what God has given them. So it's definitely some of that. And just, some of the nuances with language or learning to speak the corporate way, and doing that code switching that you have to do, so all of those things were a part of my experience. But I don't know, I think that I took it as that's part of corporate America. If I want to be here, then I have to play the game until I don't want to be here. Then I can play the game the way that I want to.
Yeah, I love it. And it really helps you develop a certain level of versatility, right?
Absolutely.
It's like if you can make it there, like they kind of say in New York, if you can make it in corporate, you can make it pretty much anywhere.
Anywhere.
Especially as Black people and people of color, because we know that those institutions, and there's nothing wrong with it. I tell people all the time is if I have my family and I look at race as family, if I'm a family and I decide to build something for my family, and I only want to hire and work with my family, and I put them first, is there something really, really wrong with that? Right? We have to get as a culture to the place where we say, okay, well, we're going to build our institutions, and not to say that we're never going to that we're going to discriminate on other cultures, but we are the highest group of unemployed people in the country. So once we get all of us employed, then we can look at applications from other folks and that kind of thing. And I think assimilation has really hurt both the Black culture and the dominant white culture in this sense that because we assimilated, you didn't really get a chance to get our full genius. And because you didn't get our full genius, there's no really way to know how much we could have contributed to the growth of this organization, right? So I think that's a huge thing. And I know that contributes to Black women now being the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in the world right now. It's like, hey, I'm tired of that. Let me just go ahead and do my thing. And that's what you decide to do. It's like, hey, let's go out and figure out and take all of these skills that I learned doing this for big time corporations. I could do this for myself, set my own prices. So what was the first experience with you going into entrepreneurship for yourself, either part-time, full-time, when you decide, when you helped that first organization and they paid you a fee, what was that whole experience like?
Nothing like that notification of the coins hitting your phone, right?
Yeah.
It was a bit surreal for me, so I moved from New York to Georgia. And one of the reasons, was that if you're starting a business of the nature that I started, you needed an environment, a business environment that was open. New York City, because it's so big, the large nonprofit sort of tower, and it would be difficult for a small fledgling consulting firm like myself to sort of get in there. But in Georgia, I live in the Atlanta metro area, the area is ripe, even though I do business in the entire country. But the first time that someone, paid for my services, I remember I went to my best friend, I'm like, people are actually paying me to do this. And they love the experience. It was, it was so freeing because, as you know, being an entrepreneur and stepping out on your own, it's really like nose diving off a cliff with a parachute that may or may not work, right? And so you kind of hold on for dear life, like, I hope this thing works. I'm going to keep going because I don't want to crash. And you do everything to get that parachute to open. Yeah. It's been fulfilling. One of the best parts of working is when I get on those discovery calls with people, nonprofit entrepreneurs who are telling me about their passion that they'd like to turn into this reality, and just hearing how we as a community have the solutions to our problems. What we lack are skills and the toolkit to do that. So that's really empowering for me as a Black business owner.
Gotcha. If you can tilt your camera up a little bit, you're chopping off the top
sure.
of your head. That's okay. And help us understand this. I think I got somewhat of an understanding. I sit on the board of an organization called Young Biz Kids, where we teach youth entrepreneurship. But I want for you to break down for us, because a lot of times people hear nonprofit and the first thing they think is no money, right? And on the other side, if people are paying attention, you have nonprofit, but yet you have some CEOs of nonprofit organizations with some of the fattest salaries of CEO. So how could you have a nonprofit and be thinking no money, but the top CEOs of nonprofit organizations really are some of the highest paid individuals in the world? Where does the money come from in nonprofit, and what does that actually mean? Does that mean the organization can't touch money because we're not profit? Break it all down so we understand.
Break it all down.
Nonprofit entrepreneur. It seems like that don't go together, because entrepreneurs trying to make money, but you talk about nonprofit. I'm thinking no money. How does it all fit?
Absolutely. So a nonprofit is like any other business. The reason that it's called a nonprofit is that the revenue that you make, whether that revenue exceeds your operating costs or not, with a for-profit company, that some of that profit would go to your shareholders. But in a nonprofit organization, the profit that you make goes back into the organization to feed the mission. And so if you are a nonprofit organization, you had better be bringing in enough revenue, because the mission that you're founded on is to provide some sort of service to a community, to a cause. And we know that that costs money. Philanthropy is hundreds of years old. And when you start a nonprofit, the goal is to make a profit. The goal is to be able to be sustainable to run your business. If you think of the Red Cross or the American Cancer Society or any large organization, they actively seek funding all the time. Anytime that there is something that's gone wrong in the world, a flood, an earthquake, you'll see the Red Cross ticket goes across the bottom of the screen on TV, and they're asking for your donations, because that is how they are powered. Of course, there are other ways that nonprofits get funded. Now there's corporate contracts, and of course there's federal grants and state and local grants and foundation grants. Those are all revenue streams for nonprofit organizations, but you're funded by donations largely.
Yeah. Gotcha. A lot of people think that you can't, they don't see a nonprofit as a business, but it has an operating budget. People have to get paid. There are supplies, there are things that people need. So you talked earlier about some of the organizations and the difference between someone who has a 501c3 tax exempt status and someone is an actual nonprofit organization, because those are two different things. You can apply for your 501c3, you can have it. That don't make you a nonprofit. What's the major difference in those two?
Absolutely. So when we started our companies, whether you're an S Corp or an LLC, you would have dealt with the Secretary of State and applied for, to operate as whatever your business type is. When you're starting a nonprofit, you're asking, or you're petitioning to be seen as a nonprofit corporation. That is an actual business legal type. So when you incorporate as a nonprofit, you are technically a nonprofit organization. What nonprofit organizations, in our understanding, are going for is the IRS tax exempt status that allows them to not pay taxes on the revenue that they receive. They still pay employment taxes and a couple of other ones, but the revenue that they receive goes into the pot because they're carrying out a public mission. They're working for a public good. And so you are able to do business without paying sales tax, and then you don't have to pay income tax. That tax exempt designation also allows you then to be able to apply for federal funding and foundation-based funding and other types of funding out there, designated, set aside for nonprofit organizations who do public good.
But you still have to build an organizational structure. You have to conduct your business. Right? And a lot of people are missing that part of it. It's like, hey, I got this nonprofit status, I'm tax exempt, I don't pay taxes, baby. But talk about some of the foundational things structurally that an organization needs to put in place to be taken seriously. Because I know if I got a 501c3 and I just start applying for grants, that don't mean nothing if I'm not set up right. So help us understand some of the foundational components that we need to put in place for these nonprofit organizations.
Right. What I like to say is, as with any other business, you have to have skin in the game. So when you start a nonprofit, one of the things that you definitely need to put in place, and it's a legal requirement, is your board of directors. And the board of directors, they have fiduciary responsibility, and they're the governing agent over the organization. And you guys decide on your mission, you decide on the values for the organization, and that is sort of like the lightning rod, right? So let's say your mission is to provide healthcare for underserved people in X community. Then all of the activities, or the majority of the activities that you perform, has to go towards that goal of providing healthcare to people who cannot afford it. And you would fundraise based on that goal. And of course, if you want someone to give you money, whether it's a loan for a house or a business line of credit, they're going to want some sort of collateral. Like, what skin do you have in the game? And for nonprofits, the skin in the game is you have some sort of operating budget, and you can prove that you have a program that you're carrying out that works, that meets a demonstrated need. And you're not just, oh, well, I felt like I wanted to do a food pantry in a neighborhood that has 50 other food pantries. Right. You're replicating the same thing, right? Why do you need this many food pantries? There's something else going on here. So you want to be able, to, one, make sure you have a board that can support the organization and be ambassadors for your mission. Two, you want to have a program that you know is meeting some sort of demonstrated need in a community, and you have a fundraising plan where you can convince individual donors where you meet the requirements for funding when they say, well, we want to see that you are able to manage, whether even if you have a $10,000 budget, did you successfully administrate that $10,000 budget for that year to meet your mission? Show us, and then we can trust you to give you a larger amount of money to expand that program or to start a new program. Those are some of the things that I find that we come up missing with as nonprofit professionals. You don't really have a clear plan of how your program is going to help others, or it's based loosely on your observations rather than data and statistics. Like you're always going to need to have the research under your belt.
Love it. So I got to research and not only see that there is a need, but that research also could say per capita, there's only 2 other organizations that are trying to solve this problem too. So they need help, and we're going to kind of dip our toe in the water and bring this angle of help to a similar situation. But then you're talking about also, I think this is where, like, I'm in a business structure class right now with the Black Mastermind group from Kansas City, and she's helping me better run my business by the numbers and the data and better getting structured. And I think with the nonprofits that are lacking the opportunity to get funding and things, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the other piece of that is now you have to track your results, right?
Absolutely. Research and evaluation is a big piece. Like the background that I come from, we're talking about, looking at outcomes of reducing maternal and child health negative outcomes, whether that's maternal death rates or infant death rates. And so you can't just say my program works. Like if you're talking about dealing in X community, we have to see that the work that you've done, so you've worked with 100 people this year, and the maternal death rate is whatever per 100,000, but in this area you've managed to bring it down 2%, 0.5%, 5%. That's letting me know that whatever that you're doing, when you've evaluated the outcomes, what has happened when you run your program proves that, one, you know what you're doing, and that, two, that you're doing the change, the theory of change that you're coming up with for that service that you're providing. It's actually sticking. It's causing good things, positive outcomes to come out in that community. And that's where we lack the research and evaluation. People run programs all the time, excellent programs, tutoring programs, but they never thought to do a pre-test and a post-test. They never thought to even keep the names and addresses of everyone that came through the program in a way that they can say, this is who we served, this is how much money we spent. They were reading, the average reading grade level was 5% below the state average. And as a result of coming through our program for these 3 years, they're at or above, and everyone's college bound. Like, those are often the outcomes that Black-led nonprofits are having in their communities, but they're not collecting the data and evaluating it to support their causes.
Yeah, and that's huge. Like, you got to share receipts out here in these streets. You got
to share it.
You got to have some receipts out here.
I want to support anything that's helping the kids read better, because we know the direct link between reading scores and the school to prison pipeline. Like, we know those things now. And there's evidence out there that Black-led, women-led nonprofits, when they're invested in, the positive outcomes are directly linked to improved graduation rate, improved reading scores, improved math scores. So it's the work that we do when we are invested in our communities, because we know our communities best and how to serve them, we're getting the results.
Yeah, but if you're not tracking the results and you can't clearly communicate the wins of the organization, it's hard to get the funding, right? And you have to do it in writing, because this is one of the things that we found with our organization. And shout out to Ariel Bivens Big. She's been doing an amazing job of bringing youth entrepreneurship. But we went through some of these things you were talking about, as we got different board members from different organizations. It's like, hey, how do you know this is working, right? What are you tracking? What are your measurements? What is your growth rate? And all of those things. And we started to see like, oh, this is really important. Like, you really have to get organized to run a successful nonprofit organization that's going to last. And I think sometimes we have a heart to do the right thing, but we don't always have the skill set or the mindset to actually do it in a way that makes it sustainable. So when it comes to the structure, the board members, right, what do you recommend that these nonprofit entrepreneurs do when selecting board members? And because I think that's another thing that we struggle with. Hey, anybody can sit on the board, right? Hey, I just need some people that need seats. Man, you want to get on board and ain't never show up at no board meeting, ain't got no input, ain't got no influence in the community. Like, what should that look like?
Yeah, you said the right thing, right? Influence in the community. So you have to think about it. Like, as with everything else, if you want to make over your house, then who are you gonna hire? Like, you need the people who bring the skills, right? So you're running a nonprofit, you need someone who knows how to fundraise well. Whether you hire that person full time or you hire them as a consultant, that's where you're investing. You want to have some sort of legal help. You want board members who knows a bit about the nonprofit space. And most of all, you want people who are passionate about the mission that you've come up with, who are going to be willing to show up to those board meetings, who are willing to not just to sit in the seats for board meetings, but also put their money where their mouth is. A lot of boards, and I incorporate a lot of new nonprofits, and overwhelmingly, the people that are on the list for board members are friends and family members, which is fine if they are bringing the skills that you need to propel your organization forward. If not, in that first year, you would have just wasted time sitting at the table talking to each other if you can get them there. You definitely need those financial skills, those legal skills, communication skills, and so forth. And so you look in the community of strong professionals, you kind of look around and see you have to network at this point and always be on mission talking about it, so that you are bringing people in that are interested in what you do and have the skill set.
Yeah, I love that, because that is one thing that is missing across the board with entrepreneurship in general in our communities. We just continue to see each other as competition, right? And that's just killing us. Like, I can't sit on your board because I got an idea for a nonprofit myself. Well, you done had the idea for 10 years and you ain't done nothing with it. So
you see me?
like we just always see each other as competition, right? And I think that is really killing us, because we talk about the collective buying power that we have. Like, all the financial publications just put out the report that we're up to 1.6 trillion or something like that, but yet our net worth is down, right? How do we have more buying power and lower net worth, right? That's a whole nother conversation for a different day, right? But I think the power is in our collective intellectual capital. That's where the power is, but we can't bring it together because we in competition with everybody and everything. It's like, come on, man, you know good and well you're not going to do nothing with that idea. Let me run with it. I got the people, I got the infrastructure. I'll give you credit, and let's just work together. And that's a huge struggle for us. So we're at my second favorite segment of the show, Judy. The segment is called Freestyle, because I know you got bars. You can't be Brooklyn born and not have bars, lady. But no, freestyle is not about. I could very well drop a beat for you.
You can drop a beat, but I don't have like bars per se. That's for another time.
All right. Well, freestyle is not about rapping or rhyming, but as I am building this multi-billion-dollar international media conglomerate, starting with this podcast that will one day surpass Ted Turner and Walt Disney, I don't always ask the right questions, right? And the conversation doesn't always evolve to the right places. So freestyle is your opportunity to either reiterate something that we've already discussed that you feel is important, or if we haven't gotten to something that you feel is real important for nonprofit entrepreneurs to know, this is your time to take 2 minutes and kind of speak from your heart and let them know what it is. So this is freestyle right here on the Cortez Hustle Show, the Judy Forbin version. Hit them with your best part, sis.
Okay. So I came up with like 5 key actions for a successful nonprofit. You know, there's so much information out there, but I think and there are tons of actions that you ought to take, but I think these 5 will sort of keep you in the right headspace and doing the right things. So the first one is to stay focused on the mission always. I find that, you know, with organizations, especially in pursuit of funding, they'll twist themselves into a pretzel to meet the requirements of a grant maker. You stick to what you set out to do, and then you go searching for either collaborative partnerships, which I'm so glad that you brought up, that will enable you to go after grants that are aligned with what you want to do, so you're not out of mission. You know, like that's one of the key things. Stay focused on the mission always, and be flexible in terms of learning to collaborate with others to get what it is that you need for the organization, because you serve a public good. You don't serve a private good. You know, of course, yes, nonprofit CEOs get paid in 6 and 7 and 8 figure salaries, for sure. But that comes after years of doing all the right things. Another right thing to do is to develop diverse funding sources. Everyone comes out of the gate saying, I've got a nonprofit, give me grant money. I want grants. I heard there's grants out there. I want them. Grant monies it's a competitive space. You're competing with organizations who've been on the ground for 20 years and 30 years and 10 years and who have the organizational infrastructure, who have 8, 6, 7 figure budgets, and you don't. You have to say, diversify your funding sources, so you're looking at doing other things. You can, you know, fee for services, or you are looking to build your individual donation base. The third thing, learn how to inspire and mobilize people behind your cause. You know, I did a live last night on Instagram. I'm like, if your story about your nonprofit is boring, then you're not going to bring people on board. And I said it flatly like that because people have the passion burning in their spirits for what they do. That doesn't always translate when they speak to others. Learn how to inspire, learn how to put those words together, and learn how to put your passion on the plate in front of others so that they want to mobilize and get behind you, because they're out there. Never be afraid of the ask. You can't be in the nonprofit business if you are ashamed and shy to ask for money. It is the name of the game. You're not begging. It is a public charity. We're coming together to do a public good. Never be afraid of the ask. And develop a culture of continuous improvement. Don't be on a high horse. Even if you did well this year, do better next year. Collaborate with others around you who will increase your capacity. Like, all organizations are lacking in some way. Seek out others. Like, you may have it really put together on the organizational side, but the other organization similar to you has it put together on the program side. Come together, make it work. Your reach is further. Your ability to get funding is wider.
Love it, love it, love it. Drop the mic, ladies and gentlemen. That is freestyle right here on the Cortez Hustle Show, the Judy Forbin version. I love that you said that diversify the funding sources, because a lot of times we think that nonprofit means I can't sell anything, right? And one of the things that we did with the Youth Entrepreneurship Program is Ariel developed a coloring book. And we sold the coloring books, and all the proceeds go to the organization. And because it's a nonprofit coloring book, we could charge a premium because it's a donation. So it's like you would normally pay $2.99 for a coloring book, but we can charge $15.99 because you know that you're getting a coloring book for your kid, but all of that money is going to the organization. So we got to use that creative genius in the nonprofit space. So we got a comment that says, hey, listen, it's been put in my heart, mind and soul, to start a nonprofit community center for disadvantaged youth in my town of Spencer, Oklahoma. You are giving tons of knowledge that I know will help me with my mission. I would love and appreciate it if we could connect. So tell everybody how they can connect with you, Judy, if they want to have that conversation like Mr. Kevin wants to have about what's on his heart, mind, and soul?
Okay. So on my social media on Instagram, you can find me at the Edgy Consultant. So you can drop a question in the DM there. I also have a website, which is edgepointconsult.com. And of course on Facebook, also the Edgy Consultant. Or you can drop me an email, judy@edgepointconsult.com. Those are the easiest ways to get to me with your nonprofit idea or challenge that you're facing, and we can work on it together.
Love it, love it, love it. Doesn't get any more simple than that, ladies and gentlemen. The Edgy Consultant, or edgepointconsult.com, is the website. Judy, I thank you so much for giving up your time and giving up your intellectual capital and resources this morning to help the people. You got any special offers going on right now?
Yeah, so for the month of March, Women's History Month, I am running a workshop on March 27th called How to Raise Up to $100,000 for Your Nonprofit. And I spill all the tea. I let you know of all the strategies, the ones that work, and actually you walk away with a plan that you can implement month after month that's guaranteed to raise, to help you meet your fundraising goals.
Gotcha. How to raise up to 100K for the month of March?
Up to 100K in the month of March. You attend this nonprofit. We go to workshops, but we don't do the work. You go to the workshop, you do the work. I guarantee you're gonna, bring in more than you're bringing in now.
I love it. Well, it doesn't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys go over to edgepointconsult.com to get yourself signed up and registered. Judy, hang out with me for a second. But we're going to wrap this thing up, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Cortez Hustle Show, and that's going to do it for us today. We've been listening to and learning from Ms. Judy Forbin, all things nonprofit. Until we talk to you next time, I want you to get your money up, because you absolutely can do it. But more importantly, you deserve to do it, each and every single one of you. So hustle up. But you've got to overcome fear if you're going to win.
You're tuned into the Cortez Hustle Show. Please like and subscribe.